The city of Gdansk in northern Poland was the setting for some of the most important events of the 20th century. After the First World War, Gdansk, an important international trade route, was governed by both the Poles and the Germans and given the title the Free City of Danzig. Tensions slowly grew over the coming decades until the 1st of September 1939, when Germany launched a strike on Westerplatte Peninsula in Gdansk, an attack that would ultimately start World War II. Much of the city was destroyed during the war from the countless Allied bombing raids. In fact, fires were still said to be burning for a month after the battle had ended. Gdansk also played another key part in European history when Lech Walesa and other workers at the Lenin shipyard in Gdansk started the Solidarity movement, creating a domino effect that drove communism out of Europe and eventually led to the fall of the Berlin Wall. Since the war, Gdansk has been rebuilt brick by brick, using detailed plans and records kept by the government to restore it to its former glory. Today, Gdansk is a beautiful, diverse city with everything from stunning architecture in the old town to beautiful beaches and nightlife in the areas of Sopot. Although the shipyards have long been closed, Gdansk still relies heavily on one major export, one that covers the city in a carpet of golden yellows and oranges: amber. Baltic Amber formed in a huge forest area that was once located north of the Baltic Sea. Amber started life as resin, seeping from cuts and wounds in trees and eventually fossilized over time. As the gem is very light, it flowed south in rivers and shallow seas, ultimately migrating to northern Poland, where it's found today. It's not possible to carbon date amber, but scientists have used heat measurements to determine that amber is anything from 40 million years old. Gem hunter Steve Bennett travelled to Gdansk to see how the city brings this remarkable and unique gemstone to the world. It is estimated that over 30,000 people, which equates to almost 10% of the city's population, are involved in the amber trade. There are countless shops and street sellers, all trying to catch the eyes of the tourists with amber carvings, jewellery and loose gemstones. Most of these shops are located on Mariarka Street, known locally as Amber Street. Even the city's football stadium was originally called the Amber Stadium. While in Gdansk, Steve wanted to experience how the locals actually find and work with amber, so he was given exclusive access by amber master Zbigniew Straljek. Steve was asked to be up very early in the morning to visit a nearby beach on the tiny island of Sobieszewska. Accompanying Steve and Zbigniew on the trip were local amber dealers Mariusz and Andrzej Gielo, who Steve has worked with for many years. This beach is the perfect place to find amber because as the sea is so shallow during a storm, amber becomes dislodged from the seabed and drifts towards the shore. Wearing specially designed Wellington boots that come all the way up to his hips, Zbigniew walks across the beach to the water's edge, where he ponders the waves, carefully deciding where to begin fishing.
Zbigniew has been mining for amber. In fact, let's not call it mining. He's been netting for amber for 43 years. We're standing on the edge of the Baltic Sea. And many years ago, and we're not sure exactly when, but around 25 to 30 million years ago, out here was a huge, big forest. Nobody knows exactly what the trees were, what variety of trees that formed the amber. Pliny the Elder had his own ideas. Scientists, gemologists, botanists, all sorts of professions have had their own theories over the years. But just out here is where the amber actually formed. And the day after a storm, if it's been a windy evening, the miners, the gem hunters, they come down very early, some 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and try and beat everybody else to the few pieces of amber that wash themselves onto the shore.
After what felt like hours watching him comb the small waves as they lapped against the shore, he eventually found 2 pieces, which although stunning to look at, wouldn't make the grade when it comes to creating gemstone jewellery. As they walked back along the beach, Zbigniew motioned towards a line of seaweed and shells, indicating that some amber may have been washed up there this morning. After just a few minutes, Steve and the team had found several tiny pieces of brightly shining amber. Even though these pieces were too small to cut, it's incredible to see a gemstone so old and so precious just washed up along the shoreline.
Maris has been my expert on amber for many years, and I've been getting it wrong about how old amber is.
Yeah, because you can't test amber by any physical or chemical method. You only can test it by the place where you find it, what kind of rocks it's in, and what's above it.
Yeah.
That's how you can estimate that it's minimum 45 million years of age. But the top age it can be is given 175 million years of age.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
So without being able to carbon date the gemstone, all those stories, in fact I've been very wrong in all the articles I've written, because I've been looking and talking to people about the Baltic as it comes in from the shore here. But inland they've now dated it as a minimum of 40 to 45 million years old.
Yeah, the minimum can be guaranteed.
Yeah.
The maximum age we don't know. Could be a lot more than that.
Yeah, dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And it's inland that we go next, as Steve has shown how a family of local miners search for amber several miles from the coastline. This makeshift mining site is set up in a farmer's field, surrounded by woodland reminiscent of the trees in which this gorgeous gemstone originally formed.
This family-run business effectively creates a brand new washing machine every 1 to 2 weeks. And what happens is they take a steel and they push that steel 10 meters down into the soil. And at the end of the pole, you can see the father there, at the end of the pole he's got the hose, and the hose is circulating the soil within the drum that they've created. And over a week or so, that's going to be pushing all the soil through the net in the vain hope of finding a few pieces of beautiful amber.
The family actually prospect by drilling tiny boreholes into the fields until they discover a piece of amber. Then they create several of these drums, essentially funneling any amber they find into the net. This technique has been refined and passed down over several generations, with the soil eventually being returned to its natural state. After the miners have finished, it's impossible to know that they've even been there. As well as the premier place for finding amber, Gdansk is the home of master amber carvers like Zbigniew. Steve went to visit him in his workshop, situated in a prime location at the heart of the historical city. The first thing you notice when entering the workshop is a very distinct sweet smell.
I guess early cavemen may have used amber even as a torch before we had wicks and waxes. And the big benefit, of course, is the aroma is really beautiful. They even say that if you wear amber on a sunny day, just even the heat of the sun, or sometimes even just the heat of holding amber in your hand, gives off a lovely aroma.
With over 40 years of experience working with amber, Master Zbigniew has a well-deserved seat on the World Amber Council and knows pretty much everything there is to know about amber and its rich history.
So you have a modern drill now, but we were talking earlier on that cavemen, or 6,000 years ago, they were making jewellery, and you were telling me how difficult they must have found it to drill the amber.
Yeah, the amber is really very soft to drill, but drilling it from one side to the other, you get you chip the stone on the other side. So optimally, how do you call it?
Optically,
you call it. You have to drill it from the both sides to meet the drills in the middle of the stone. Mm-hmm. And that was difficult in our days.
Yeah.
So a lot of stones got broken, and one's drilling from the one side.
Yeah.
And we found the remaining from old shops, old workshops doing amber in the ground from 7,000 years ago.
Wow.
It was that long ago.
And that was in this area of Poland?
In this area, in the Gdansk area, the oldest we ever found was about 7,000 years old.
So sort of 5,000 BC. It's a long, long time to...
Yeah. That's.
Seeing Master Zbigniew work is a true marvel, as he understands exactly how to give each piece of amber that captivating glow. Amongst some of the treasures he owns is a small piece which contains a fully formed cockroach.
No wonder zoologists and botanists find this an incredible gemstone. I'm looking at a cockroach here, but when you remember this is a time capsule of around 40 million years ago, and this insect has been completely preserved. It's quite fascinating. Not only do the insects and the leaves trapped inside amber give us a good understanding of what was happening in the environment at the time, even the curvature of the amber itself can teach us a lot about the trees from which it formed. For example, when you get big pieces like this, if you look closely at the curve here, this would have been on the outside of the actual tree. So measuring this, we can accurately work out the circumference of the tree. And in fact, on the inside, the actual pattern here is almost an impression of the bark of the tree itself. Smaller pieces, well, these will have formed on the smaller branches, not the actual trunk, but the branches. And you can see the diameter on this. So this was probably so big, probably 2 or 3 inches wide in diameter.
Amber can range from almost white in colour through various shades of orange to near black. This demonstration shows us how the lighter coloured amber floats to the top of the water. This is because the white colour actually corresponds to the amount of oxygen in the gemstone.
The more you learn about amber, the more fascinated you become with it. Now, we all know that some gemstones over many years will fade a little bit. It's just Mother Nature's way. She keeps it underground. It's nice and dark. It's nice and cool, retains its colour, but leave it in the window over decades. A really nice, even beautiful amethyst will lose a bit of colour. Amber's actually the opposite. When this was cut and faceted about 80 to 90 years ago, it was more this colour. It was full of oxygen. But over the last 80 to 90 years, as the oxygen evaporates out of the actual gemstone, it turns a darker, more rich orange. In fact, I've just been told that this beautiful box that was cut and made in the 1950s actually started off, when it came into his family as an heirloom, more this colour. And as you can see already, the transformation into this very bright and rich orange.
Visiting Gdansk, it's easy to see why the people of the city are so in love with amber. Amber doesn't just fascinate gemologists, it engages and educates geologists, paleontologists, geographers, chemists, zoologists, botanists, archaeologists, historians, and even physicians. Its living nature, along with its beautiful appearance, its healing properties, its mystery and magic, makes amber one of the most fascinating and unique gemstones created entirely by nature.